I'm Laura McInnes-Ray, and welcome to Beneath the Rhythm, an RX Music podcast. Today I'll be picking the brain of a seasoned stalwart in Toronto's music history, Rob Bowman. Rob's expansive career has earned him many accolades, including 6 Grammy nominations for his work as a writer and producer. And today he joins us in the studio promoting his most recent project, co-written with Daniel Tate, The Flyer Vault, 150 Years of Toronto Concert History. Morning, Rob. How's it going? Welcome to Beneath the Rhythm. Really excited to have you on today.
Glad to be here.
So let's start from the beginning here. Your co-author, Daniel Tate, rediscovered a trunk of flyers and finds, for lack of a better word, kind of a musical Narnia.
Oh, yeah. And for Daniel, these flyers, a lot of them he had been putting up on posts, working for various promoters for hip hop and electronic shows. So he had been at the show. So for him, it was nostalgia, putting them up in the damn posts. It was nostalgia being at the show and how great it was. I mean, it was a real fun memory lane trip for him when he first rediscovered his trunk of flyers.
So the next part of the story is he starts this Instagram account, calls it the Flyer Vault.
Right.
So
Great name.
We have this idea that it's this sort of time capsule and you never really know what you're going to find in there. And slowly it seemed like the traction started to build online and we start realizing how many people were at these shows and how many of us haven't forgotten them. And how do we dig back these memories and sort of create this larger narrative of things we maybe hadn't known happened yet? I guess my question for you is a project like this, bringing together 150 years of Toronto concert live music history. Where do you start?
Well, at the same time that Daniel found his trunk of flyers and began his Instagram account and began posting initially hip-hop electronica, he got interested in, what happened a little before this? What else could I find? And he found flyers and ads for earlier shows. And so Daniel's growing this account, and then he keeps wanting to grow it further, and he's got the intellectual curiosity to want to know about music he doesn't know about, to want to know about music that came before him. And he gets interested in a group called Parliament Funkadelic, who, of course, have been sampled to death in the hip-hop world. George Clinton's wonderful, crazed ensemble. I've done 3 CDs with Parliament Funkadelic over the years, and Daniel heard about that, and somebody said, look, if anybody's going to have flyers for P-Funk when they lived in Toronto in 69 and 70, and they still play on Yonge Street at the Cock Door and Hawk's Nest, Rob Bowman's going to have them. So Daniel gets a hold of me. I do not have those flyers. I had interviewed all those guys. I knew all about those performances and so on, but I'd never seen a flyer. But somehow, I can't remember, I think he brought it up. He said, you want to go have a coffee? So we did. And we sit down, and he's an interesting guy, and he's full of energy. And he opens up his laptop, and I see this array of thousands of thumbnails of these flyers that he's collected. And along with the flyers are some earlier posters and some pre-posters advertisements from newspapers that he's been able to digitally lift.
A flyer, put simply, is an advertisement, like a visual teaser encouraging you to participate. Perhaps it was a tall, handsome man pictured mid-strum advertising Elvis Presley at Maple Leaf Gardens in 1957. Or maybe it was a bold font stating Led Zeppelin at the Rock Pile on Yonge Street, August 18th, 1969. Advance tickets, $4.
Led Zeppelin.
Let that one sink in for a minute.
So he has some things that go back to the 1950s. He had some rock and roll shows in the 50s. So he had already done a fair bit of work going back. I had kept a handwritten list of every show I had seen since I started going to shows when I was 12. I'm a maniac, and I went to thousands of shows, often 4 a week when I was a teenager, easily, and often 4 a week as an adult too. And I'd handwrite everyone, the opening band, the headliner, the date, the venue. First couple of years, I wrote little reviews of everyone. I gave that up. That was way too much work. And it's now several inches thick. And about 5, maybe 7 years ago, I finally started putting them into the computer, the current ones. I've never gone back and put all that paper to the computer. Way too much work. Maybe one day if I ever retire, but I doubt I'll retire. They'll take me away when I'm 105 somewhere and throw me down the riverbank, and somebody else will have to do that. But I had also been intrigued by what happened before I was going to shows. And people a little older than me would tell me about things like Cream at Massillon in June 1968, and I'd almost start crying. How could I have missed this? It's painful to even think about it. And so I'd sort of added to my list, I'm building a database of shows, and I began to pretty well have everything down for the 60s. Then I'm a university professor, and I helped write a textbook on popular music. I was the first person to ever teach popular music in Canada at the university level. And so I had Canadian content, of course, as part of that. So I needed to research how the Toronto newspapers looked at rock and roll in the 50s to see if it was the same as the American hysteria about it, sending youth down into immoral territory and all this stuff. And Canadian media was just as nuts as the US media. But so I'd already researched that and documented all those shows. And then I started, just sort of 2 a.m, I might start doing research for an hour or two and, find little isolated things. So I started to build this larger database. And then when Daniel and I met, we thought originally of doing maybe an exhibit. And then the book idea came up. And so both of us kept going back and further and further and further, trying to find different things. Then once we signed our contract, then it became insane. Then it became every night, 10 at night to 3 a.m, probably 25 emails or texts going back and forth between us. And it was mind-boggling, the stuff we'd find. We wanted to do it 1850 to 2000. Daniel had one poster from 1851, which was just amazing. Jenny Lind, first international tour ever in North America. As an ethnomusicologist, I knew all about the Jenny Lind tour. It's famous in U.S. history. I didn't know she played Toronto. And she only played Toronto. She played 3 shows. And dig this, 1851, we didn't have a railroad connecting us to the U.S. She must have come by stagecoach. How do you book a show when you're sending letters by stagecoach? How do you even get it so they actually agree to a fee? They're going to show up. Held in a beautiful space called the Horticultural Garden Pavilion. Down in Allen Gardens, there used to be a big 1,800-seat concert venue there. Long gone. I'd love to see what that looked like. So that's where we started. 1850. We had to cut it off somewhere. As I worked my way back, I kept finding things as far back as 1840. It was pretty mind-boggling, the stuff we found. It became love, obsession, and ridiculousness.
So that's what I find fascinating is like you're saying, is how you have to sort of create this timeline, decide what you're going to incorporate, decide where to make the cuts, 1850, 2000, beyond 2000. So it's ambitious as an understatement.
And not only is it ambitious, but, we cover everything from blackface minstrel shows through Jubilee and gospel performances, jazz, blues, folk, country, 50s rock, classic rock, hard rock, punk, grunge, hardcore, hip hop, electronica, Queen Street, festivals. There's chapters on every one of the things I just said. And we decided that's what we were going to do. It seemed like a foolish decision if you wanted to sell books, because we thought, the hip hop kids, they're not going to be so interested in knowing about Hank Williams playing Mutual Arena in 1949. And the country fans aren't really going to care about hip hop, let alone will the jazz people give a damn about classic rock and blah, 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 blah. But I don't really care. I mean, I thought it was probably a bad commercial decision, but no one else was going to do this. Daniel and I were well on the path between his visual collection and my database of information. And we thought, let's do it. Let's take it all away. And Laura, my database is nuts now. It's insane. Only part of it can be in this book. So what I had to do for every chapter was, okay, this is all that happened, this massive amount of material in this particular genre. But what am I going to write about? Obviously, the earliest shows, highlights of shows, representative shows for different subgenres. But there's no way that I could ever include.
I want you to talk about one right now.
Okay, you go for it. You go for it.
Well, I like that there's this segment where we're obviously talking about the first time avant-garde jazz is sort of making an
Oh, yeah.
introduction.
That's cool.
And it's interesting, I guess, to me being a millennial, I'm looking at Yorkville as how I know Yorkville today.
Right.
And I'm reading about this and I'm thinking there was coffee houses, and I'm sorry, Howlin' Wolf was playing
At the Riverboat in Yorkville, yeah.
and I'm walking down Yorkville now, and that's, full of high-end restaurants and boutiques and lovely Christmas lights in the season and whatnot. And I'm thinking, how do I get to see Howlin' Wolf here? Is that technology around yet?
Well, if we ever get the time machine, I'll take you there.
It's 1963. You're on the corner of Yorkville Avenue and Avenue Road, home to the counterculture movement in the 1960s. Coffee houses and clubs lined the streets, and Yorkville welcomed the art scenes with open arms, quickly becoming a haven for singer-songwriters. Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Gordon Lightfoot, these are just some of the household names that were getting their feet wet. At this time, the legal drinking age was 21. But young people flocked, hung out in coffee houses, and saw live music. The Riverboat, Penny Farthings, the Purple Onion, these are just some of the venues that colored the thriving arts and music scene in the 1960s. It was sex, it was drugs, it was rock and roll.
I was lucky. I saw Wolf a lot, but I saw him on Yonge Street at the Colonial Tavern because the Colonial was real special. It had a downstairs and an upstairs. You had to be 21 to get in downstairs. That was the drinking age then. And I started going there when I was 13 years old because upstairs was a restaurant license, and any age could go there. And the great thing about it is they had this massive cutout upstairs, so you could sit at the seats around the rail of the balcony, and you're right above the stage, see and hear everything. And they were bringing in Muddy Waters. They were bringing Howlin' Wolf, T-Bone Walker, John Lee Hooker, B.B. King, plus jazz guys like Ornette Coleman, Roseanne Roland Kirk, Miles Davis, Charles Mingus. I saw all these people when I was 13 and 14. And when I started working for magazines when I was 15, my very first interview with the Colonial was T-Bone Walker, the guy in 1949 who worked Stormy Monday, covered by the Allman Brothers and all sorts of other people. I mean, this was like, what fantasy land is this? Toronto was so lucky. And up in Yorkville, they had this incredible array of coffee shops where there were mostly, white singer-songwriter folk musicians. Joni Mitchell and Neil Young played clubs there before they became huge. But they also brought in blues people like Howlin' Wolf, Buddy Guy and Junior Wells, Sonny Terry, Brownie McGee. This city was a hotbed of music. And what if I learned one thing from this book? We had, of course, a great electronica scene. We had a massive hip-hop scene. But we had an incredible Jubilee scene in the 1870s and 1880s. This was always a musical mad city that always was going to support live music. And as the gateway to Canada, everybody came here. It's like New York, LA, Toronto. Those are the three most important cities if you want to tour North America.
I mean, geographically, we are quite lucky to be that close to New York.
Well, we're also lucky as the gateway to Canada. And now we've become the third largest city. We're bigger than Chicago now. But even when we weren't, we got more than we might have if we'd been a similar sized city in the U.S. because this was, Montreal's French speaking, Toronto's an English speaking city, was the gateway to Canada. And, by now, 1/3 of Canada's population lives within a few hours drive of Toronto. I mean, that's kind of a weird thing too, right? You can hit 1/3 of the country just by coming to Toronto.
When we look at something like this, where you thought about maybe doing it as a live exhibit, and then you decided on a medium like a book. So we have the visual elements of the flyers, and we're able to detail such detailed recounts of the people who were at the show, or maybe they met at the show, or saw Led Zeppelin before they actually became Led Zeppelin and whatnot. So it's interesting where when I think of the live music scene that I know today and how far it's come in terms of capturing things candidly, where it's using technology or talking about it or posting it online, it's still creating a conversation. And so this was obviously such an a beautiful way to have this conversation just out there and sort of lay it out, and sort of start that conversation again. Like you said, how there was a Jubilee scene. How many people do you know could talk about that right off the top of their head? They may not know. They may not know about the inspiration Geddy Lee took from seeing a Zeppelin show.
Right.
Particularly enjoyed that chapter.
Yeah. And Geddy's account of what he did to go to that show, pawning a typewriter he'd been given by his grandmother, and, having to figure out how to get it back after the show, but he needed the money for the tickets. It's great. His passion, the same passion that every generation has for different kinds of music. And I love that passion, no matter what age the people are.
And there also is this element of overlap where you were able to marry this older history and match it to the current, and sort of what's the cultural context surrounding this now. And when you walk into the Horseshoe and it's this sort of hallowed Horseshoe Tavern on Queen Street, it's this sort of hallowed place. And, we learn about the Garys and their promotional run.
Unbelievable run. Yeah, the Garys were saints.
I'm waiting for that book too.
The Garys, I've told Gary he needs to write a book. The Garys changed the cultural landscape of this city.
Here's an excerpt from The Last Pogo, a film by the Toronto-based filmmaker Colin Brunton, which captures the last punk show at the Horseshoe Tavern in 1978.
The two Garys booked most of the punk bands into Toronto. A lot of bands from England and a lot of local acts. They booked them into the Horseshoe for 9 months, and during that time, that was probably the best club Toronto had for punk rock. The owners kicked them out after the 9 months, and to sort of show what the best of the Toronto punk rock was, they had The Last Pogo. It was great. It was representative of the best bands in Toronto.
I mean, this whole business is based on favors, You do me a favor.
Payola, bribery.
You can get band X if you book Y, Z, and Q, even though they're not viable financially or artistically for that matter,
We don't go after, we don't read Billboard and book after top 10 stuff. It's strictly what we want to hear.
There's a whole new young generation out there, whether they're 15 or whether they're 45, who deserve to be heard and deserve recognition. And if you keep doing it long enough, people, if you do what you believe in long enough, it's just a matter of time before everybody comes back and finally realizes that you were right all along.
4 years ago, we brought the Ramones in, and like the director of the movie and myself and a few other people were the only people that thought they were any good, Record companies were laughing at them. Peter Gabriel was walking into the theater and walking out 10 minutes later saying they were nothing, Now we can't even get near them, and all the people that's put them down before are the ones that control them now, and they don't really care. It's all money and meat.
It's Gary Topp and Gary Cormier. And they started, first of all, Gary Topp at the Roxy Theater, the original 99-cent Roxy down at Greenwood and Danforth, and it was the most surreal theater. He would take a film and partway through it, have another film come in. Everybody there was high every night. It was just, It was totally of its time and nuts. I was going down there when I was in high school. And then he got the New Yorker Theater on Yonge Street and began to bring shows there, including the very first punk show in the city, the Ramones, in September 76. And then in 78, for 9 months, the Garys ran the Horseshoe till the owners of the Horseshoe felt that punks weren't buying enough beer. So they got kicked out of there. And then they got the Edge New Year's Eve, 78. And they had the Edge from 79, 80, and into June 89. And it was the most astonishing space and place. I remember seeing the Cramps, and it would end with Lux Interior completely nude because the place was really hot. He'd taken off all his clothes. He's sweating to death. He's got a microphone in his mouth, and he's hanging from the pipes above the stage. Now, if that isn't rock and roll, I don't know what is.
I remember to be alive.
Oh my God, it was amazing. I remember seeing Dave Thomas of Per Ubu doing the encore song Non-Alignment Pack, and Dave whacking an anvil with a hammer for percussion. Have you ever seen an anvil and hammer on stage? I've never seen it before or after that moment. Or the Slits when they came, this all-female punk band, and Airy Up with her head like a pineapple with this astonishing voice she used to use. These were magical performances. They used to say they booked from their record collections. Whether it would make money or not, well, we'll see. But at least they get to see all their heroes in their record collections. And they really changed the culture of the city.
So my question for you now, I think, would be, having seen such legendary shows, when you're seeing live music today, there must be sort of a feeling of, when will I see the next big thing, or how can this top something that I have seen and I keep in my memory? And yeah, I don't think I need to ever see another show again that's going to top that one.
I have never thought that because I'm a junkie. I love music and I love live music. But I must say, Laura, that I've seen a few thousand shows, and I've seen I've been to 7 Rolling Stones club shows. Most human beings haven't been to one and would die to see them in a small club. I've been to 7 of them. I've been a very, very lucky human being. I've seen lots and lots and lots of impossible to get in shows, not just in Toronto, but all over the world. I mean, now I was in New York the other week seeing Bob Dylan. I regularly am flying to shows in all over North America and stuff. I don't just see them in Toronto. But there's still this thing that's vital and exciting about when a band connects with an audience, finds that groove, and the magic comes down on that room, whether it's a 300-seat club or 20,000 people at the Air Canada Centre. It's now got that stupid new name, that Scotiabank Arena. I hate whenever they change those names. But anyway, whatever the size, magic can happen. And I must say, having seen as much as I have, I find it hard to tolerate merely good music. I need it to be great. I mean, my levels of excitement, the bar is high.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an expectation thing as well to manage.
Yeah. And so I often am disappointed. I think, oh, it's fine, but it's nothing special. But then you still hit those special things, and it's like, whoa, this is amazing. This is what life is all about. When I was 7 and I first got excited about music, it's because it made me feel more alive than anything else I'd ever experienced. The world was suddenly brighter. It's like, the lights had got in the sky brighter. Everything was better. And it still could do that.
Walking now through the streets of Toronto, down streets I've come to recognize, I understand them with a stronger sense of appreciation. There's weight underneath all of these stories. Here in Toronto lies a vault of historic music happenings. Music is an intangible thing, something that is intrinsic to human life. It is this completely mysterious art form that never gets phased out by new technology. It remains ephemeral, relevant, and ever-changing. We are all connected by it, and it is completely fused into our lives. So what would you say if your, let's say, 10-year-old self having discovered music is going to be your thing? It's going to, you're not sure in what capacity, but you know that you're going to be involved in it. You know that you're going to be at it, inside it, all over it. What do you think your 10-year-old self would think now looking and reflecting on you having just written?
So my real 10-year-old self from many years ago, I would think that he would be beaming ear to ear, would sort of be, I can't believe this is going to happen in my life, but this is the most amazing thing that could happen. I mean, I've grown up and worked with my heroes. I've worked with Bob Marley. I've worked with the Rolling Stones. I've worked with Bob Dylan. I wrote Prince's stuff when he's inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I worked with P-Funk. I did a box set with Lou Reed. I mean, literally, Chuck D, Public Enemy, and I are close friends. Literally, I have worked with the majority of my heroes. And I don't know. I mean, it's like a dream come true. And this book was an incredible amount of fun. And Daniel Tate was an amazing person to work with. And in some ways, it's a gift to Toronto. I don't mean that in a too pretentious manner. I mean, we did it out of self-interest, not to make money. We're never going to make much money on this book. But this book does document 160 years, really, 1840 to 2000, of Toronto concert history in a way that probably, no one had ever done. And I don't know if anyone would have ever done it. We have some great books on Toronto punk, Toronto hardcore, Toronto hip hop, but nobody's tried to do a book that covered, if you will, the waterfront. And I doubt anybody would have written about all the early stuff if it wasn't in the context of a book like this. And the response we're getting from people is amazing. People, and it's really two things. Oh, I was at that show, and it brings back such great memories. I forgot about that show. Or the other one is, oh my God, they played here? How could I have missed that? Sometimes it happened while people were alive and they just didn't realize it happened. And then others, it was before their time. And they just go, oh my God, I really would have killed to have been there. But either way, it provokes emotions. It makes them think they have a better sense of Toronto. It is a love letter to Toronto and a love letter to concerts. And you know what? I'm born and bred in Toronto, and I've been to a whole lot of concerts. So in some ways, this is a love letter to what I do with my life and what a lot of other Torontonians have done with their life.
A heartfelt thanks goes out to Rob Bowman for joining us on today's episode. Rob Bowman is the co-author of The Flyer Vault, 150 Years of Toronto Music History, co-written and created by Daniel Tate. Go and grab yourself a copy. You've been listening to Beneath the Rhythm, an RX Music podcast made for and by music lovers. This program was produced by Craig Clemens, Regan McDonnell, and Tony Young. Images by Andre Grant, social media by Room Joom Jiga, and I'm your host, Laura McInnes-Ray. Thanks for listening.